Round 13 of the 2025 AFL season is coming your way this weekend, and I'm going to try and help you find all 8 winners coming up this weekend. This is the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. Sit back, enjoy. Let's chat about some footy. Welcome on in to the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode number 37 of season 2025. Another big weekend of football coming your way this weekend. It's round 13. We're going to be doing a preview episode today, as we do each and every Thursday. We're going to be going through every match. We'll try and find you all the winners. There's 8 games coming up this weekend, so we're going to be previewing all of them. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you're new here, hit that noti bell as well so you don't miss any other releases if you're on YouTube. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, don't forget to rate the podcast. Don't forget to leave a comment. Don't forget to hit that follow button. All the interactions always help. This is the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. It's round 13. Let's jump into all the action coming your way this weekend. We've got some big games, some good games, some very interesting games coming your way this weekend. So first up, we got Thursday night football. It's Bulldogs Hawthorn. This will be at Marvel Stadium, Thursday night football. Western Bulldogs going in favourites. Hawthorn not in the best form. Bulldogs coming off the bye last weekend. Shall be interesting game. Hawthorn obviously lost 3 in a row now. This is an important game for them. Not much else to say about it. On the surface, there's some changes for Hawthorn. Teams haven't been officially announced yet, but Sicily's out for 2 weeks. He's not been in the best form of late, so I don't know what difference that will play on their ability this weekend. And I believe Nick Watson is also out of the team as well, which has just been announced in the last hour or so at time of recording. So a few changes there for Hawthorn. Bulldogs, meanwhile, they're about a week away from getting Darcy back, I believe. He should hopefully be back in round 14, which is huge for them and their second half of the season. Looking at the form of both teams, as we said, Hawthorn have lost their last 3. Before that, they were going really well at 5-2 for the season. So hit a little bit of a speed bump. Obviously, the Gold Coast loss was not a bad one. It was up in Darwin, where Gold Coast have a really good record. So you kind of forgive that one. 2 weeks ago, they got kind of smashed by Brisbane at the MCG. So not a good performance there. And then Collingwood absolutely dismantled them on last Friday night. Don't expect that same performance from Hawthorn this week. I would expect to see them come in and put in on a lot more pressure and tackle a lot harder than they did last week against Collingwood. Meanwhile, the other side of the fence, obviously Bulldogs coming off the bye last week. But before that, their form wasn't terrible. It wasn't great. 3 matches ago, they played Gold Coast up in Darwin, so similar to Hawthorn. They were both very similar matches in the end, in all honesty. Gold Coast won both of them by about 10 points. The following week, they absolutely smacked Essendon all over the park. Won that one by like 90 points. And then followed that up with a close loss down at the Cattery to the Cats. Lost by 14 points. Wasn't a bad result. High-scoring game. They freshen up over the bye week. They come back. We'll see how they come out of the bye. But things certainly not looking too bad for Bulldogs this season. If you look at the numbers, offensively, Bulldogs certainly better than Hawthorn so far this year. Defensively, slightly above them as well. Their numbers look pretty good, Bulldogs. Same was the story last year, though, but they just lack consistency. This year, I think we've seen a better Bulldogs so far. Their win-loss record isn't perfect, but all their losses have been against the good teams, and their wins they've been winning all the games they should be winning. So going by that, you'd expect that they probably win this one. It's not as simple as that. Don't get me wrong. But things don't look too bad. History between these two, it's pretty level over a period. Since 2018, last 10 matches, 5-5. However, Hawthorn have won their last 3 against the Bulldogs, which does include that elimination final last year, where Hawthorn beat Bulldogs comfortably that day. They met one other time last year, and Hawthorn won that one by 7 points. I think that was at Marvel Stadium, if I can remember correctly. 2023, they met twice. Bulldogs won the first time, Hawthorn won the second. So Hawthorn do have the record over them over the last little bit, but overall, you'd have to think the Doggies, that shouldn't affect the Doggies too much. I wouldn't think on this occasion. What else is there to say? It's going to be an interesting battle. I think it's hard to know exactly what the key part of this game is. Obviously, the Bulldogs midfield is really strong. Bontempelli, Ed Richards, Tom Liberatore all having outstanding seasons. Bailey Dale off the back line is really good. I think a key factor for the Doggies here is what their scoring ability will be. Obviously, they're still waiting for Sam Darcy to come back. They're getting a lot of midfield goals, which has been very important for them so far this season. Will they score a big score here? Quite possibly still. I think they've got a forward line at the moment that Hawthorn's back line probably doesn't match up too well against. They've got a few smalls that are doing well, and obviously their midfield score goals. Hawthorn, their forward line is a bit hit and miss. Obviously, Nick Watson out. He's kicked 18 goals from 12 games, so that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Jack Gunston is probably their big key this year so far. He's kicked 25 goals from his 9 matches. He's been really good. So they're probably going to be relying on him and Chol a lot here. Ginnivan's been good last week as a ball winner more than just a goal kicker, but he did kick 3 goals from 30-odd touches. So it's going to be a fascinating game how this one plays out. I think based on what we've seen this year, certainly over the last 5 or so weeks, you'd think the Bulldogs win this one, but I certainly won't be writing Hawthorn off. I would expect that their tackle numbers greatly improve on what we saw last week. I think they'll be coming out wanting to make a statement that they're not done. And this is a perfect opportunity to do it, in all honesty. It is at Marvel Stadium, so it's not perhaps Hawthorn's preferred ground. It certainly is the Bulldogs. But, yeah, I think coming out of the bye is always tricky to judge how a team's going to go. But I'm sticking with the Dogs, I think, in this one. But it should be a very interesting game and a good game. Hopefully it lives up to that, is basically the long and the short of it. We'll jump into game number 2, Friday Night Football, and this is our All Aussie Rules game of the round. It's Adelaide Brisbane at the Adelaide Oval. Adelaide starting favourites here. Quite overwhelming favourites. Not massive favourites, but well and truly definitely going to be starting as a favourite in this match. Against Brisbane, who are second on the ladder. Friday Night Football. Third versus second on the ladder. It should be an absolute cracker. Let's hope that it lives up to that, I guess, is the long and the short of it. These two teams have actually played quite a lot of close games. If you think back to round 9 last year, these two teams at the Adelaide Oval was a draw. That gets us a little excited. They then met again at the Gabba 8 weeks later, and Brisbane only won that one by 11 points, so that's another good sign. They met in the pre-season this year. That obviously doesn't mean much, but the Crows did win that one by 3. So do have a little bit of some history of it being close. You go back earlier than that, 2023, round 22, they met, and Brisbane won that one by 6 points. Adelaide won the time before by 17. So you've got to go back all the way through to 2022, round 9, for the last time the margin was more than 3 goals between these two teams. Brisbane definitely have the head-to-head record over Adelaide, 6-3 over the last 10. Obviously, a draw in there as well. And they've won the last, or two of the last 3, and the other one being a draw. So history may be slightly on Brisbane's side here, but this is in Adelaide. This is a different Adelaide team than has been out there since really 2016, 2017 sort of time period. Overall this year, the numbers, attacking-wise, certainly look better for the Crows than Brisbane's attacking numbers. But defensively, it's pretty close, but Brisbane's slightly ahead. in those numbers so far this year, which shapes up for a really interesting battle, I guess, between the two teams, and I'm really looking forward to this one. This is probably the most must-watch game of the week on paper. This Adelaide forward line, how will they go against the Brisbane back line that's been going quite well this year, in all honesty? Adelaide have a lot of options, going forward. Fogarty, Thilthorpe both have high 20s in total goals so far this year. Chuck in the fact that two smalls have also in that range, with above 20, with Rochelle and Keys both having kicked 20 so far. Taylor Walker, as their third tall, has 19 goals. And then they're getting goals from Neil Bullen, who obviously plays mainly forward, but rotates through midfield, and Isaac Rankin, who also is the opposite, plays a lot of midfield, but does go forward a little bit. He's kicked 15, so plenty of options going forward, which gives them plenty of different looks at goal and makes it very hard for a team to stop them. On the other side of the coin, they've had a few decent goal kickers. Like Hipwood has 21 goals in 12 games, which is pretty solid without being outstanding. Logan Morris, 20 goals in 11, so a couple tools there that are getting goals. And then Bailey, Callum Archie, both really quite good as well, with 18 goals from their 12 games each. But it kind of drops off a lot after that. They get the ball forward a lot, Brisbane, but they just, a bit like last year, they're not the most effective team going forward. They turned it around a little bit late last year, but they're kind of back at the level that they were this time last year, which isn't a bad thing. It certainly gives them something to build on, knowing that they did it last year. But I think this Adelaide onslaught in attacking style certainly will be tough for the Brisbane defence to stop, because most things are going the way of Adelaide at the moment. Their midfield's really rolling, their forward line really rolling. It's their back line that they're vulnerable a little bit, I think. And Brisbane probably don't have the most damaging forward line to really pressure that Adelaide backline. I could be completely wrong. It's going to come down a lot to the experience of Brisbane if they're to win this game, but I think on paper Adelaide look like they should win this one. Moving on to the next game, it's on Saturday. It's Richmond v Sydney at the MCG. Should be an interesting game as well, in all honesty. It's 16th versus 14th on the ladder. Sydney go into this favourites, even though they're coming off an absolute terrible loss last week by 90 points to the Adelaide Crows. I don't know what to say about it, to be honest. Richmond have lost their last 3. Sydney have lost their last 2. Neither team going particularly well. One team certainly overperforming, one team underperforming so far this year. You go back to this corresponding matchup last year. It was in round 3, so a little bit earlier in the year last year, but Richmond actually won it by 5 points. They were the only team to beat Sydney in the first 12 or 13 weeks last year. And it was the wooden spooning winning team in Richmond. What do we make of that? I don't know. Richmond have a decent record against Sydney, which suggests that maybe they're a chance. You'd have to think Sydney at their normal level would beat these guys reasonably comfortably. You look at the numbers across the board, even though Sydney are playing quite poorly at the moment, you'd say that they'd be well and truly in this and should win this. But then again, you watch what happened last weekend to Sydney and Adelaide, in Sydney even, against Adelaide, and you'd say they could never win another game of football because it was atrocious. They didn't even look like they were in that game at any point. And that's basically the long and the short of it. So the head-to-head record 5-5 between these two teams. Sydney 4-8 for the year. Richmond 3-9. Richmond are coming off a week where they should have perhaps won the game of football against GWS. Kicked poorly in front of goal. That definitely cost them, I think, in the end. The last 4 weeks has actually been quite good on paper. 2-point win against West Coast. 4-point loss to North Melbourne, which could have gone either way. 23-point loss, to Essendon. And then, obviously, a 3-point loss to GWS last weekend. They quite easily could have won 3 of those 4, which would have been absurd, in all honesty. But it perhaps tells you that maybe, just maybe, this Tiger team has the ability here to win this one. It's really hard to go against Sydney. But maybe, this is Richmond's chance. They're putting together some good form. They nearly beat GWS in Sydney, so GWS arguably are better than Sydney so far this year. So it's not going to be easy, but the writing on the wall says that Sydney are falling fast. So make of that what you will, I guess, is the long and the short of that one. I don't think there's too much else to go through in this game. It's not one that too many people will be tuning into intently. Richmond supporters, sure. Sydney supporters, maybe. Neutral supporters, probably not hugely, because it doesn't look like a great game on paper. It is the sort of game that Isaac Heaney's going to come out and have 30 touches and kick 5 goals and win the game on his own, but I certainly won't be backing that with any confidence at all. So yeah, that's Saturday afternoon game. The Saturday evening game at GMHBA Stadium down at the Cattery. It's Geelong v Gold Coast Suns. This would, in a lot of weeks, be a match of the round. 5th versus 4th on the ladder. There's some really good football coming up this weekend, and this is one of them. Geelong will go in quite heavy favourites. They're in good form. They're playing at home, so a lot of things going the way of Geelong, but they also have a habit of losing some of these games where you kind of think that they should win. So I'm not fully confident that they're going to win it, but they should win it. Last time these two teams met was similar time to this, round 10 last year, but it was up in Darwin, and Gold Coast played probably their best game of the year when they kicked 26 goals, won it by 64 points in a really high scoring but really good performance up in Darwin. 2023 when they met, Gold Coast won that one as well. So they've won the last couple, the Suns, over the Cats. However, they've been home games for Gold Coast, whereas this one's obviously a home game for Geelong. You go back the previous 6 meetings between the two teams before that, and Geelong won them all. Over the last 10, it's 7-3 in favour of Geelong. Overall numbers certainly look Geelong's way. Certainly attacking numbers so far this year favour Geelong in this matchup. Defensively, it's pretty level, but there's just that attacking difference at the moment. Really looks towards Geelong being heavy favourites into this. Interestingly enough, a lot of numbers for Gold Coast do look good this year. They just have that occasional little slip up that's probably affecting their numbers a little bit. You look over the last, this season so far, they started really well. They're 8-3, so they're still in a really strong spot. However, 2 of those 3 losses certainly aren't the best results for them. You look back to their first loss of the year against Richmond, who obviously are one of the bottom few teams. Certainly not a loss that a team with eyes on top 4 would want to be doing. Obviously, Sydney did that last year. They finished top of the ladder still, so it's not the end of the world, but it's just a little bit of a hiccup, I guess. Their other 2 losses, Brisbane at the Gabba, you completely forgive that. Brisbane are the reigning premiers. And then their 3rd loss came last week. It was wet, but it was a home game against Fremantle, who were travelling across the country, obviously. And to lose that one by 11 points is probably a little bit disappointing for them. Still, eyes firmly set on that top 4. They're 4th on the ladder, having played 1 less game than a lot of other teams. So things are still really good, really well shaped for Gold Coast this season. But this is a tough one. This is probably their toughest game of the season so far. Geelong at the Cattery is not an easy assignment for any team. The week before their bye for Gold Coast is even more interesting. They lose this, they drop 2 in a row heading into their bye, which is not obviously ideal. On the other side of the fence, Geelong are really going well. They've won 4 of their last 5. unfortunately for them, their loss was a weird one against GWS at the Cattery. So GWS not in the best form, so not ideal result there, but a couple of their wins have been really good. Obviously, the Collingwood win 5 weeks ago was a massive one. They smoked Port Adelaide in Adelaide. They comfortably beat West Coast last week over in the West. I won't say it was the greatest performance of all time, but they certainly looked the better team most of the way through that one. And the other week was a really solid win against the Bulldogs. So, they're 8-4 for the season. They certainly look like a team that has a lot of potential this year and that really could be challenging throughout the later half of the season, all the way through finals. But they just need to iron out some of these losses. Obviously, the St Kilda loss, the GWS loss down at the Cattery, just losses like that, they probably don't want to be stacking up too many of them, but they're certainly a team that has set themselves up to give themselves a chance at top 4. I think on paper they should be a team that finishes top 4. If we look back to my predictions at the start of the season, they were a team that I had winning the premiership actually this year. So I still think that they're a solid chance for that. There's a lot of things that are going right for them. So I certainly haven't changed my opinion on that. I still think they're one of the top 2 or 3 teams in terms of having a chance at winning the premiership this season. Move on to the next game. And it's Saturday night football, and this is probably not one of the more exciting games of the weekend. It's at the nation's capital at Manuka Oval. It's GWS hosting Port Adelaide. GWS going to be heavy favourites going into this. They're not in the best form. Port Adelaide coming out of the bye, also not in the best form. It shall be an interesting match, though, to see if GWS can kind of regain some form, because they're still sitting 7th on the ladder. They don't want to give up too many of these sort of wins if they want genuine chance of playing finals this year. Their form recently hasn't been great. They have won the last 2 matchups against Port Adelaide, one of them being a semi-final 2 years ago in 2023. Before that, it was a bit of a run of Port Adelaide games. Before that, it was a run of GWS games. So it's kind of streaks of who wins. 6-4 over the last 10 all time. They're 8-8. Offensively, Port Adelaide don't look great this year, whereas GWS are reasonably good offensively across the year. They obviously had some really good games, like the one against Collingwood. Some not so good games like last week, and a couple others. The one against Adelaide rings a bell. Defensively, both teams have been struggling. There's no two ways about it. GWS's tall defence has had some really good games. They've also had some average games. I think they're a little bit down on their best form. Their running back line is obviously their strongest part of their ground, probably. Lockie Ash, Lockie Whitfield. Unfortunately, their ability to stop scores not going quite so well. At the moment, it's not to say that they can't turn that around, because they do have a lot of talent in that back line. Just at the moment, it's not going great. Port Adelaide, a lot of things are going wrong for them. Their last couple games have been really not great, in all honesty. They've lost their last 4 before their bye, with most of them, 3 out of those 4 being absolutely terrible losses. Their last win was against North Melbourne at home, when they only won by 9 points. So that's kind of a sign of where Port Adelaide sit at the moment. Their 4 losses since then: beaten by Bulldogs by 90 points, lost the showdown by 5 points. That was a good performance, even if they did lose by 5 points. That was a solid enough performance. But then the next 2 weeks, 70-something point loss against Geelong in Adelaide, really bad showing. And then they went over to the West to play Fremantle and lost by 49 points in the pouring rain. So it's really starting to get away from them this season. They're 4-7. Finals is looking like a battle. If you haven't already, go check out the mid-season review video on the YouTube channel, on my YouTube channel, All Aussie Rules. we delve into Port Adelaide a lot there, but things just aren't looking great for them at the moment, and they've got a lot of work to do if they want to fight their way back into contention of finals. I don't see it happening. It would need a really massively good turn of form, and one that at the moment I just don't see happening. GWS on the other side, they have won their last 2. They've won 3 of their last 4, but I'm just not convinced with how they're going. 5 weeks ago, they lost by 14 points to Sydney, who have been quite bad this year. They followed it up with a really outstanding performance against Geelong down at the Cattery when they won by 4 points. Lost at home to Fremantle by 34 points, which was not a great result for them. I know Freo are in contention of finals. Don't get me wrong, Fremantle are a solid team, but across the country, GWS really should have been winning that. They then went down to Marvel Stadium and took care of Carlton. Weren't outstanding, but certainly got the job done. And then only just got over the line against Richmond after being 28 points down at three-quarter time last week. So their form's hit and miss. They're just kind of a little bit off the pace at the moment. They should be way too strong for Port Adelaide on paper and in every way, but they just need to find a way to get back to their best form that we saw mainly in opening round, but certainly over that first 5 or 6 weeks we saw a lot better than what we've seen over the last 4 or 5, in my opinion. I don't think there's anything else to go through on that game, so we'll jump into Sunday football. There's only 2 games on Sunday this week, and the first one is over in the West. It's Hands Oval, which is in Bunbury. North Melbourne have sold their home game to the West Coast Eagles. So this is a North Melbourne home game, but it is in the West. 17th versus 18th. Bottom of the ladder battle, maybe not the battle for the wooden spoon, because you never know, Richmond could still be in that fight. But this is going to be, if North get this win, it certainly makes it hard for West Coast to get out of bottom spot, in all honesty, because they'll be a couple games behind Richmond with 11 weeks to go. North are favourites for it, surprisingly enough. It is in the West, but I mean, it's not at Optus Stadium. What do we make of this game? Who knows? Who knows what we're going to get? West Coast have certainly been a little bit better over the last month or so, but certainly still a long way off. Offensively, numbers look better for North. Defensively, numbers look better again for North. This is in the West, though. If we think back to 12 months ago, the game that these two teams played over in the West, it was at Optus Stadium that day, but West Coast lost that one, I think. I'm thinking back. Yes, they did by 9 points. So just lost. They kicked really poorly that day. They met again later in the year in round 22, and West Coast managed to win that one. That one was down in Tassie. So the away team won both of those matchups. This one obviously is technically a West Coast away game, but obviously a lot closer to home for them. So I don't think we can take too much from that history. Over the last 10 meetings, it's 5-5. It's gone, the last 4 have gone North Melbourne, West Coast, North Melbourne, West Coast. That tells you North Melbourne may be here. A lot of the numbers suggest North Melbourne, but if we look at the little bit of recent form, West Coast numbers aren't as bad as they were, is all I'm going to say here. They have only won 1 of their last 5. They've only won 1 game this year. That was 3 weeks ago against St Kilda. It was obviously in the West. It was a solid performance. The week before that, they only lost by 2 points to Richmond. And since their win, got smacked by Adelaide, but that's no bad thing because Adelaide are obviously flying at the moment. And then last week, they were competitive for most of that game against Geelong. They were only a couple, 3 or 4 goals down late in that game before Geelong just kicked the last 3 or 4 of the match. So their form isn't terrible. You look at North Melbourne, they've been very competitive for 3 quarters a lot of times this year, but they just don't have that finishing ability when it matters most. 3-point loss to Essendon 4 games ago, Followed it up with a really good draw against Brisbane down in Tassie. 4-point win over Richmond two games ago. Then against Collingwood, 3 points down at three-quarter time and ended up losing that one by 45. So fade-outs has hurt them a couple times this year. There was the Collingwood one. There was the Gold Coast one. I think maybe one more. But overall, their numbers look pretty good. They just don't finish off games. However, this is probably easier task than most. They're coming out of the bye, though, so there's always that question mark about that. I'm hesitant to be confident either way, in all honesty, with this one. I think we'll be going North Melbourne, but at the same time, it could well go West Coast. You got to think that if West Coast can beat St Kilda over in the West, they've got to be a chance against the Kangaroos. It's not that simple, I know, but you've got to think that they're at least a chance in this one. The second of the Sunday games is the Sunday night fixture. It's now the traditional game. Carlton, Essendon, MCG, Sunday night. Obviously, stick around. There is a Monday game as well. We'll get to that shortly. Blues, starting favourites here. No surprise. They met this match last year. The Blues won it by 26 points. What do we make of this? I don't know. Recent form, neither team flying. Essendon probably certainly look better than Carlton overall this year. Carlton 4-7 for the year, 13th on the ladder. Essendon 6-5, 10th on the ladder. Blues 2-3 across the last 5, but have lost their last 2. Essendon 3-2, so an okay record there, but have only won one of their last 3. The Blues, they're hit and miss. Their 2 wins in the last 5 weeks. Really good win against Geelong and a win against a low-ranked St Kilda. Their losses against Adelaide, against Sydney, and against GWS. Whereas Essendon have been, so far this year, beating teams they should be winning against and losing against top teams. And in all honesty, their loss against Brisbane last week was a really good performance. The week before, they played well and beat Richmond. I know it's Richmond, but still got the job done. They were really poor against the Bulldogs. But then before that, they beat Sydney and they beat North Melbourne. So they are beating the teams that they should be. I can't see them playing finals, but at the same time, if they can knock off Carlton here, it wouldn't end Carlton's season, but it would certainly make Carlton's season really hard. Carlton do have a semi-easy enough run home, but it certainly would make it difficult if the Bombers were to knock them off here. A look at the history between these two teams, 6-4. So Carlton have won 6, Essendon 4 of the last 10. They've split the last 2. As we said, Carlton won last year's matchup by 26 points. The year before, Bombers won it by 34 points. Year before, it went the way of the Blues by 26. Overall, it's pretty even history, not massively one-sided. This matchup, where do we see it won or lost? It's going to be about whether Carlton can get their offense going, because that's probably been their biggest issue this year. Their defense has been really good, as we kind of expect it to be, but their offense has been underperforming. Whereas last year, it was kind of the other way around. Their offense was going really well, but they were really struggling to stop other teams from scoring. They've basically just flipped that so far this year. Meanwhile, the Bombers, their attack not going fantastic either. Their defense has been okay without being sensational, but it's got the job done against the teams that it's supposed to get the job done. So take that as you will. I think Carlton should be winning this game, but don't rule out the Bombers. They've been putting up really good fights this year, and maybe that's what we'll see again here. I certainly am not writing either team off in this one. Carlton should win, could go either way. Jump into the last game of the weekend. It's the big freeze game. It's Melbourne v Collingwood at the MCG. Monday afternoon, 3:20 kickoff. Probably a wet weather game, which historically probably helps Collingwood over Melbourne, but then maybe not. We'll see what happens. Top of the ladder, Collingwood. 12th on the ladder, Melbourne. I don't know what to make of this, other than to say it should be a Collingwood win. But in football, there's no such thing as a should be win. Historically, it's not a massive favour to any team here. I know Collingwood have an 8-2 record over the last 10 matches, which suggests that it's massively Collingwood, but there's been a lot of close ones. Outside of last year, Collingwood did win both matchups reasonably easy. They won this one by 38, and then they won round 24, which was a dead rubber by 46 points. But obviously they met 2023 qualifying final, and it was a 7-point win to Collingwood. They met in the Big Freeze earlier that year. It was a 4-point win to Melbourne. 2022 they met twice. Collingwood won the second one by 7 points. They won the first one by a little bit more comfortably. 2021 they only met once. It was Collingwood by 17 points. 2020 was a massive win to Melbourne. So there's been a few close games, but overall Collingwood have the better record. Offensively, Collingwood are flying. They're getting a lot of opportunities from a lot of different sources. Mainly Jamie Elliott, who's in career best form. He's kicked 33 goals in 12 games this year. He's in, by far, his best form of his career. Meanwhile, Brody Mychek is getting goals. He's kicked 22 from 10. Bobby Hill's been good and in with the pressure, as most of the Collingwood small forward brigade has been. They're just getting the job done offensively. Defensively is where they really stand out, though. They're the best defense in the competition so far in most metrics. So it's going to be tough for this Melbourne forward line to kick goals, I think. They get most of their goals through midfield players. Cozzy Pickett is their leading goal kicker this year. He's kicked 18. Yes, he does go forward, but most of his goals, most of his time is spent in the midfield. Christian Petrarca is their second leading goal kicker this year with 13. Behind that, Cade Chandler, who plays high half forward, and then Bailey Fritsch, who plays that makeshift key forward, I guess. So they're really struggling to find avenues at goal, and this Collingwood team has been really good at stopping opposition from kicking scores. Cozzy Pickett's going to be huge in this game, though, because of the fact it's going to be wet. It's probably where he plays his best football, in all honesty. You look back, he played really well against Fremantle, I think, at the MCG in the wet one day earlier this year. It wasn't pouring rain, I don't think, but it was certainly dampish. So he's going to be their main avenue for goal, I think, based on what we've seen this year. If Collingwood can stop him from kicking goals, Melbourne are going to find this really difficult to win. Whereas Collingwood have a lot of opportunities to goals. Plus, you chuck in the fact that the Collingwood defence has been really good this year. It's hard to see how Melbourne create goal opportunities outside of those midfielders and smaller sort of players. So that's how I see this game on paper. It doesn't mean it's how it's going to play out. But, yeah. Look at the last 5 weeks. Collingwood have won their last 4. They lost to Geelong 5 weeks ago, but since then beat Freo in Freo. They beat Adelaide in Melbourne in wettish conditions. They ended up beating Kangaroos after a slow start, and then they were really dominant against Hawthorn last week. Melbourne, they'd got themselves into form, beat West Coast, lost to Hawthorn, but then beat Brisbane and Sydney, so the last 2 grand finalists. But had a disappointing performance last week up in Alice Springs against St Kilda. Poor kicking in front of goal has really hurt them in this one. They kicked 7 goals, 21. Should have been a lot closer than they were, but that's football in the end. Poor kicking in front of goal will cost you games. It's cost a lot of teams games this year, so probably will cost at least one team this weekend. It's just the way football goes. But on paper, you'd have to say Collingwood just win this one. That's about the long and the short of it. Before we jump into my tips for the weekend, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. This hasn't been as long an episode as we normally do for reviews. I'm not sure why it's gone so quickly. I know there's one less game here. St Kilda and Fremantle both have buys this weekend. Don't forget to head to the YouTube channel if you're not there already. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that noti bell. Go check out all of our mid-season review videos. There's been 4 up already. There's going to be another 2 coming up. No, there's 5 up already. Sorry, Fremantle went live yesterday at time of release of this one, so go check that out. St Kilda will be going up on the channel tomorrow. There'll be another 4 every week until every team has finished the buys. So go check them out. We have a look at their best players, how the season's going, what we expect to see from each team for the rest of season 2025. So go check them out. Show them some love. I think they're really informative videos. So let's jump into my tips. That's all that we've got left to look at here. And this is how I've gone. So we got Bulldogs on a Thursday night to take care of Hawthorn by 11 points. Not super confident in it, but I think the doggies have showed the better form over the last 4 or 5 weeks. Adelaide over Brisbane, purely because it's at Adelaide Oval. Brisbane maybe not playing sensational football at the moment, but there's every chance that they bounce back. I think this might actually be a close one. I've said 17. I can see this going down to the final kick of the match. Sydney by 8 points over Richmond. Once again, not confident at all. Richmond could well upset Sydney here with the way that both teams played last week. You'd say Richmond win. Geelong over Gold Coast purely because it's down at the Cattery. I've got them by 27. GWS should be too strong for Port Adelaide based on what we've seen so far from Port Adelaide. 35 points I've got them by. West Coast over Kangaroos by 3. Not confident with either team. Kangaroos probably have shown a lot more this year than West Coast have. But it's in the West, so there's a part of me that's just pointing towards West Coast. Sunday night footy, Carlton to beat Essendon by 27. Once again, not hugely confident. Carlton are quite strong favourites. Probably more favourite than they should be in my eyes. But I see them being too strong. Collingwood should be too strong for Melbourne. It's going to be wet, so I don't think they will absolutely smash them, but I think they should be too strong for the Demons on Monday. For the big freeze, go check that out. There should be some really good football this weekend. I'm looking forward to it. We've obviously got third versus second on the ladder on Friday night. We've got 6v9 on Thursday night, and we have 4v5 on Saturday evening. So there's at least 3 really good games of football coming your way this weekend, so go check them out. Don't forget to check out all the social medias. We post every day on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, /X, all those social medias. It's always All Aussie Rules everywhere. Go check it out. I appreciate you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments below who you think's going to win this week. I'm Jay. This is All Aussie Rules Football Podcast, episode 37 in the books. I'll catch you on the next one.